G'day guys, welcome back to Play on Footy. Today we're going to be doing some AFL Fantasy 2025. Look, it's that time of year sort of where it's a bit too early to call, but it's good to just shuffle your team around to see where it sits. And I've definitely been doing that a lot. And so here's my back line. As you can see, I've got Jordan Clark at D1, Sicily at D2, Short at 3, Kane Farrell at 4, Ari Schoenmaker at 5, and Bo Allen at 6. So let's start with Jordan Clark. Jordan Clark really did have, he had an okay year. It wasn't a bad year by any standards of the imagination. Luke Ryan probably had a bit more of the attention put onto him at the beginning of the year, and then sort of towards the 3 quarters through the season, Luke Ryan sort of had his moments where he sort of dipped off a little bit. Jordan Clark, Hayden Young were really up there in terms of highly touted defenders from Fremantle, and I think this season Jordan Clark's really ready to have a big year. Freo have a pretty good run heading into their first sort of, I think, buys round, 14 or something like that. So I don't have to worry about him with that early buy. The only one here that I've got to worry about so far is Sicily with his early buy coming up, I think around 3 or 4 from memory. But yeah, I've gone Jordan Clark just because of his speed, his agility off half back. He's a bit, basically, in my opinion, a Lockie Whitfield in the making. And I think with Freo's game style, it's not John Longmire, it's Justin Longmire, who basically we sort of know what he's going to be like this season. I don't think he's going to switch things up too much, and I think Jordan Clark's going to be that sort of switch player that can run it out of half back, and he's got that really nice raking kick on him as well. So I think his pressure acts have been pretty good as well, and I think that overall I would rather Jordan Clark than someone like a Luke Ryan. I don't think Luke Ryan's a player to get this season to start with anyway. We'll see what happens throughout the season. My next one is James Sicily, as you can see here at 896. Again, I haven't gone to the 1 mil mark intentionally, of course. A lot of people, may be using Sheasel. He's one that's been popped up a lot. But I won't go too much into Sheasel. Just focus on James Sicily for now. And James Sicily, he had a cracking year. He was basically the swingman for Hawthorn. I mean, he went forward and back, regularly, I suppose. The only thing with him that I'm a little bit, we'll see what happens, but I think Josh Battle and Barras. I don't think Barras is going to be a major concern for Sicily. I think it's going to be more Battle just to see where he fits in with it all. Again, Mitchell did use Blake Hardwick, as a bit of a swingman as well going forward in that game against Collingwood in the gather round. And that, look, to me, that was actually a pretty smart move. And then it was replicated with James Sicily against the game against Port, where Ken Hinkley and Sicily had that confrontation famously. But I think James Sicily, for me anyway, is going to be one of those players that, for the price point of $8.96, even with his early buy, which again is not favourable, but it is something that I don't mind, because James Sicily, he's a fierce leader of Hawthorn. I think he is going to be someone that is going to be heavily relied on and used by Mitchell this coming 2025 AFL season. And I think that he has a lot of upside. I think he can definitely bring his next level, and I do believe he's got another gear. I definitely think he's got another gear to go to, and he's definitely going to be leading this young Hawthorn team. With the likes of Battle potentially helping him out a bit, as well as Hardwick. I don't really see Frost. I mean, Frost and Barras are going to be really, I guess, fighting for a position there, but you got to remember Hawthorn really the weak link that they had last year was their back line, and most of the time James Sicily was plugging that hole really. And now that they've got Battle, now that they've got Barras, I do believe that frees up Sicily, and I think Sicily needed that. I don't think it's going to be negating his ability to rack up a healthy AFL fantasy score. I think it's actually going to improve it, because it's going to allow another layer for Mitchell to be able to use Sicily in the best way possible. So I think for me, it had to be Sicily. I think when I went through the list, obviously Whitfield has that early bye. And I just think there's more upside with Sicily. That's all. That's why I picked him, and I think he's got that ability to go back and forward, as well as on the wing as well. So yeah, no, I'm happy with Sicily. Jaden Short, he's been highly talked about for obvious reasons. With Richmond having a massive exodus of players, a lot of premiership players leave, like Liam Baker, Jack Graham. Vlaston, who is still there, of course, and McIntosh, who is getting on, but he is still playing one more year. And I just feel like Jaden Short, he's got a lot on his plate this year for that back line. You got to remember they had Gipkiss go down for an ACL, who was their young recruit in defence. Doesn't just because he went down with a knee doesn't mean he's going to come back hard and strong. And I think Jaden Short, even though he's had a lot of soft tissue issues over the past, and that's probably a little red flag, but I think if he can get his body consistently right throughout this 2025 season, I think it priced at $825K, you'd be silly not to take him up. And I think that's why I went with him, because, Vlaston can only do so much. But I think Jaden Short has that other layer where he's got to really fill in the holes of, I guess, Liam Baker's the obvious one that he's going to be, not having to rely on, as well as Daniel Rioli, who's now gone to Gold Coast Suns. So I think with that being said, Jaden Short should be a lock in your team. At $825, he's not a huge risk. And you've got to understand, Richmond are going to really suffer this year as well with those departures that I've mentioned earlier. And, Richmond going into that sort of phase where the ball's going to really be down on their back line a whole lot of time, and Jaden Short is going to be racking up those pill numbers, I believe. So, I think Jaden Short's a lock at D3 there. The next one, who I guess similar to Short, but into a bit of a lesser extent, Kane Farrell. Now, Kane Farrell, he had a pretty decent year for Port, let's be honest. You got to remember, Ratugolea and Alia are down back there. Ken Ingley, weirdly tried to put Ratugolea forward, which I guess, Ratugolea, look, he's not a star defender. But the qualities Kane Farrell has, to support Alia when he did, and to have younger boys around him like Logan Evans, Francis Evans, all that sort of stuff, he's going to be a shining light for Port. You've got to remember, Dan Houston's no longer there, running off half-back. And I do believe Kane Farrell, is going to have to take up a lot of that responsibility, whether it be kicking or just all-round being their key back. That's going to be right there. So I believe at 804, Kane Farrell will be the one to grab, because, he's a bit of an outlier in terms of he's not highly touted. He's not really in a lot of people's sights with AFL fantasy. So I've gone Kane Farrell just to see what does happen there. But he is a little bit of a watch for me at this point. Another one is Ari Schoenmaker. Now, a lot of people in D5, in AFL fantasy at D5, have Kitty Coleman. I'm not so sure on Kitty Coleman. I don't believe that he'd be the right man for the job. And I've actually backed Ari Schoenmaker. He's got a raking left foot. He looks the goods, and I think even though they've got Travalia and another star recruit, which I cannot just remember for the life of me right now, but if you know, you know. He is, I think, in my opinion, probably going to be or have the biggest upside as opposed to a Wanganeen Miller or Sinclair. Don't get me wrong, those players are brilliant, but I believe for the price point and for D5, I think Ari Schoenmaker fits the bill at this stage at $494K. And then last at D6, I've got Bo Allen. So he was the New Eagles recruit, pick 13 this year's AFL draft, and he's got similarities, in my opinion, to a Bontempelli. Physically, I believe. He's got a lot of room for growing and development, putting a bit of size on, but I believe, Bo Allen is the one at this stage. So I put him at D6. at the moment. Coming down to my centre, I've got Sam Walsh. Now, a lot of people have been thinking about Sam Walsh, and for me, I picked Sam Walsh because I guess he had that breakout game against, I can't remember what team, but he came back from his back injury and got 145 first game back last year, and I thought, wow, this guy, obviously when you think of the midfield of the Blues, you got Akers, you got Chera, Doherty to an extent, and then Cripps, who normally gets the tag, and then you got Walsh, and then Walsh is just an absolute gun. So I believe at M1 I've got Sam Walsh, and I put the captain on him because they've got a game against Richmond first game. The next one I got Jordan Dawson. Now this one's a bit of a watch. Look, I love JD. I think he's an absolute weapon as well. Adelaide getting him from Sydney was probably the best pick that they could have got at the time. The only thing I'm hesitant on is because of the game plan that Nix is going to be utilising. Is he going to be doing something a little bit different there in that Adelaide midfield? I'm a little bit tentative, even though I've forked out, 1.08 on him. I just, with Isaac coming now into the fold, Peatling, who I'm not really convinced Peatling's going to be much of a issue with Dawson in terms of the amount of pill he'll get, but the other one is so there's Cumming as well. So Isaac Cumming, Peatling, and there's another one as well. Rankin did have a bit of time in the midfield as well, and he's obviously more of a forward line player in terms of that's his position. But I think Jordan Dawson has the potential to go big this season. It's just whether or not or how he is utilised by Stephen Nix, and that to me is a little bit off. Like I just don't really know fully yet, so that's why I'm a little bit tentative. Connor Rosie is another one. Port Adelaide had an injury interrupted year. If you remove those injured games where he did like a knee or a thigh or something pretty bad. If you remove those games that he missed, he would obviously be in the 1.08. It's like up there with Jordan Dawson. I think he's got a lot of upside. Yes, he's got Butters to contend with or JHF, but JHF he's been used more up the ground, and I think, Rosie as the captain, he's due for a big year. He's due for a big year, I think. And Port Adelaide are going to have pressure put on them, and especially Ken Hinkley. But I believe Connor Rosie is the player that I want in my midfield this season, 2025 AFL Fantasy. Tim Taranto is another one who had a bit of an injury-interrupted year last year, but he's got a lot of upside. He's only got Jacob Hopper to really contend with for the pill in the midfield there for Tigers. Just means that, when he does get the ball, I think, even though he might turn it over every now and again, I think he's got a lot of upside there as well. I think if he can keep similar to Rosie, if he can keep his body right this season, these two definitely have a lot of upside. But yeah, I just think he's the one to go for. The next one's Jeremy Sharp. Now, you're probably wondering, why have I gone Jeremy Sharp? Why? Like, you've got Brayshaw, you got Sarong. Why would you go Sharp? Well, similar to why I went with Jordan Clark. He's obviously not the number one defender for Fremantle. You got Luke Ryan and probably Hayden Young up there as well. But I think with Jeremy Sharp at 7.49, a lot of people missed this guy last year. They completely missed, including myself. I completely missed this guy. But this guy, Jeremy Sharp, he shows a lot of upside in the way that how he uses the ball, how he's on the wing. And he really is a part of the link, a part of the chain that Freo are incorporating, that chain of delivery inside of 50. And I think he had a couple of games where he kicked multiple goals. I think one game he kicked 3 goals. And he was their best player in their derby loss to the Eagles. I remember Jeremy Sharp was just an absolute standout. I think for me, Jeremy Sharp's that outside player where he's not a 600k mark player like a Harley Reid, but he's a 749, which he's earned, very well. He's earned his stripes last year. I think Jeremy Sharp is due for a big year. And I think, as I was saying earlier, Justin Longmuir we know what he's going to be sort of utilising. He's not an unknown coach, or you don't really, like, you sort of know what to expect from JL, whereas with Stephen Nicks, with the Adelaide Crows, I'm probably lost at the moment. Jordan Dawson's probably out of all these players I mentioned, I'm probably a little bit more sort of tentative on. But we'll see at a later date, and this is all subject to change, of course, as it's quite early on in January here. And then for my three last sort of midfield spots, I've got Jagger Smith, who was pick, I think 3, was he? Or I can't remember exactly, but I think Levi Ashcroft was 3. Jagger Smith was like 2 or something, I can't remember. And then Josh Smiley was in the top 10. Okay, these 3 players were in the top 10. I can't remember exactly what picks they went, but I think when I look at it, Jagger Smith, I'm a little bit still undecided on. I don't know when he's going to get game time with the Blues. Levi Ashcroft as well, not quite sure, but he is just an absolute gun, so I had to pick him. And Josh Smiley as well. I didn't go Sam Laylaw because I've heard in the traps that he's probably not ready right now, so I didn't go Sam Laylaw. I think he's got some sort of injury or something like that holding him back, so yeah. And then for the rucks, I've got Jordan Sweet. And you're probably wondering, what am I thinking? Well, to be honest, this guy broke a lot of AFL fantasy players last year, like absolutely broke them. And what I mean by that is a lot of people didn't obviously start with a Grundy or a Gawn or even a Darcy Cameron. And this guy was like 400 something to start the season last year. And then we all know what happened with Ivan Soldo, that girlfriend sort of dilemma. He basically had a bung knee, like he had an operation on his knee, and it was just not right for him. So, Ken Hinkley was caught between a rock and a hard place, you know what I mean? And so Jordan Sweet came in. He was a recruit from the Bulldogs. He took the opportunity with both hands and he ran with it for the whole season. And look, admittedly, he's got a lot of upside, this guy, and he reminds me of a bit of a Darcy Cameron in the way he is built, the way his agility, the way he moves around the ground. He's not like a Darcy that lumbers around the ground. This guy's very athletic, and he definitely has a good sort of, ability to win the footy, but he's also just very fit and agile, big man. So I've gone Sweet over TDK. TDK is another one that's really highly touted at 900k from the Blues. For me, I just don't think their run is as good as Port's, and I think Jordan Sweet will back up his form as of last year. And also, I just think Jordan Sweet will just kick Soldo to the curb. I don't think, yes, there's going to be competition between those two, but I just think that Soldo is really on the back foot. He's really on the back foot, not only from his own teammates from missing their club, end of year party, but like he hasn't earned his stripes, Soldo. Yes, he's in a premiership player from the Tigers, but that doesn't mean jack shit when you move clubs. I mean, you've got to earn your stripes, and I think Jordan Sweet last year definitely did, and he earned my respect and a lot of other people and media personalities as well. So I've gone Sweet with R1 and R2. Sean Darcy. Now Darcy, man, this guy, talk about breaking hearts. He literally is probably like, this year is make or break for this guy. A, to get his body right, and B, to actually be the player that Freo think he is. And, he's a ruckman that has had weight issues. He's had knee issues. He just doesn't look like a professional AFL footballer. And I mean that with all due respect. I mean, he is literally, I don't even know like what standards he even has, but look, I'll cut him some slack. So in 2025 or last year, December 2024, there was pictures of him released training, and he looked like he had obviously really worked on his diet and also exercise regime. And I think I'm going to back him in. It's a risk, but I'm going to back him in. Forward line, I've got Liam Baker at F1. And Mateus Filippo F2, Bailey Smith at F3, Daniel F4, Steely Green at F5, which is a bit of a weird one, I know, and Elijah Hewitt at F6. So Liam Baker, I'm just trying to think of what to say about him. I think, last year I had him in my team. He was a Richmond player, of course, and he had checked out, and he did post a couple of great scores for me, and then he basically just withered away, and I traded him out. So this year at 805k, I know he's a bit up there in price, and he's a lot more than, like, say, Jack McRae from Saints, but I believe his role with Eagles and under the guise of Minnie McWalter the new Eagles coach, with that tie from Richmond, I think Liam Baker and Graham are going to be his operators. And what I mean by that, are they going to be the men that go in there and do what they need to do for their coach, and they have a lot of respect for their coach. These guys are the leaders of the Eagles Football Club. Not only because of their, they won a premiership at Richmond and, they know what success looks like, but they do know how to play hard contested footy. Liam Baker is going to be utilised, I think, all around the ground, and his main objective this year is going to be protecting Harley Reid. His job, as well as Jack Graham's job, is to protect Harley Reid. And that is what Minnie McWalter is going to be executing. It's going to be fascinating watching these guys, the Eagles, this year. Look, I know they're not going to be probably right up there, but they might surprise a couple of people in a couple of games, like they did last year against the Freo Dockers. I mean, who would have thought that they'd win a derby between them? So, a derby, I should say. So, look, I've got Liam Baker at F1. Look, subject to change, but I've gone Liam Baker for that reason. I think his role is going to be really, really exciting at the Eagles. Yes, he's going to be contending with Liam Duggan, but I think he's going to be aiding Liam Duggan more than anything. I think Liam Baker's got a lot more upside. He's less expensive than Liam Duggan, and I've gone with Liam Baker as a result. Mateus Philippou, again, he's going to have a breakout year this season, I think, under Ross. Ross sent him away to the VFL last year, and he had to do a lot of soul searching. There was a lot of games last year, well, not a lot of them, but in the games that he did play in the AFL, he did improve. And there was a game, I think it was against the Roos, I can't remember what round, but he came out and played really good footy. And a lot of people said, this kid, this is what we knew this kid could do. And so I think for me, at 6.56, I'd rather Philippou over Darcy Wilson. Why? Because he's got a lot more upside. His position and his athleticism on the field is going to be utilised better, I believe, under Ross Lyon. And so he's going to be one of those young kids to watch this year, just like Harley Reid exploded last year. Mateus Philippou is going to be the one to watch this year. Next is Bailey Smith. He went away last year with that ACL injury, didn't play a game. Now he's back at a different club, Geelong Cats, through his Cotton On sponsorship deals. With all jokes aside, though, I think Bailey Smith is going to be one of the players to watch, not only for Geelong, but for AFL fantasy purely. I think he's got a lot of upside, only $598K, unbelievable. And he's going to be one of those players that probably plugs the hole that Max Holmes did last year, and at times Tom Stewart. So, I think Bailey Smith is going to be the one to have in your forward line, especially that price as well. So, I do hope he definitely does well this year. Next one's Caleb Daniel. Again, I'm not really sold on Caleb Daniel. I've got him in my team, but I'm not completely sold. It just really depends on how Alistair Clarkson basically, plays and what sort of strategy he implements at the Roos. Because you got to remember, there's a lot of players coming through now. Not only new recruits like through the draft, but also these pre-existing older players like Caleb Daniel. You got Jack Darling. You got Luke Parker. Jai Simpkins is going to be one of those ones, but last year it was really in that back line of Roos players. It was Colby McKercher. Yes, he did have that foot injury towards the back end of the year, but he racked up possessions in that back line. Obviously, the big name that everyone knows is Sheasel. Sheasel just absolutely dominated, and he did spend some time in the midfield as well as up forward. Now, does Sheasel spend time in the back line? I don't think so. I think Caleb Daniel, as well as Colby McKercher and Zach Fisher, spend more time in the back line than Sheasel does. I think Sheasel's going to be there just to stem the flow. Like, if they're getting killed in their back half, the Roos, I think Clarkson will send Sheasel back there just to stem the bleeding if it's really bad. But I don't think Sheasel's going to be utilised in the back line this year as much as he has been in the past. Steely Green is in the forward line there. I love watching this kid play. I think Steely Green's going to be one of the most exciting players Richmond have this year to watch. I think his 4-goal, 5-goal haul last year was unbelievable to watch. I can't remember what round it was or who it was against, but I just remember seeing that game and all the commentators were like, oh my God, this kid is an absolute weapon. So I think Steely Green's got a lot of upside at 355. He's played a couple of games already, and I think I'm going to back him in there as well. And Elijah Hewitt, he missed a lot of last year. I think he's played like 1 or 2 AFL games already, but he's had that foot issue. And so I really do hope he can keep his body right and stay on the park, but he's going to be an absolute jet for the Eagles, and reminds me a bit of a Redden type operator as well. Now let me show you who I've got on my bench as well. So let's just zoom out here. On the side here in the back line, I've got Caleb Smith. Now, Caleb Smith's highly touted as a Richmond defender. I didn't go Gipkiss. Reason being is because of, I guess, his knee injury, and I'm not quite sure about him. Like, I know I've gone Bailey Smith, but I just don't think I can back in Gipkiss. You know what? If he gets a call up, I'll happily trade him in. But at the moment I've got Will Dawson, who seems like a bit of a lock there on my bench, as well as Caleb Smith. On the bench as well, I've got Sid Draper for Adelaide Crows. I think he looks like massive for like an 18-year-old. Like literally looks like a fully built AFL player, similar to that of Sam Layla. And Toby Travalia, I've got there as well from St Kilda in the midfield. So Sid Draper and Toby Travalia. And then I've got, as my R3, Archer Reid. Now, Archer Reid's an interesting one because when you look at the big men of Eagles, you've got Callum Jamieson, who's now a defender, right? The big blonde-haired guy. You got Archer Reid, of course. He's about 202, 203 centimetres. And then you've got a guy called Harry Barnett. And then on top of that, you've got Matt Flynn and Bailey Williams, who are basically, fighting it out. And then you've also got Jack Williams, who's the forward. Well, Jack Williams is like the next JK, basically. But it would be interesting to see if Minnie McWalty uses Jack Williams as like that backup ruck, that second ruck that can just sometimes go in the middle there, just sort of, plug the hole for a bit, but not ruck the whole entire game. But Archer Reid's another type of operator to watch. For whatever reason, Matt Flynn goes down again, and Archer Reid does better than Bailey Williams, then perhaps Archer Reid gets game time. We'll see. But you've got Harry Barnett, who's knocking down the door as well. So you got to remember, West Coast Eagles have a history of producing pretty good big men. Back in the day, they had Mark Seaby. They had who else did they have? They had Sinclair, who went to the Sydney Swans as well. And they also had I can't remember that big guy, that big ruckman from Scotty Lysett, who was in the 2018 AFL Grand Final. So Eagles definitely know how to produce big guys that can be pretty good long-term assets. So I've gone with Archer Reid there. Daniel Curtin and Ted Cloesi. Cloesi did a pretty good job last year. I thought that's why I pick him up. Geelong player, kicked a couple of goals last year, was pretty good. And Daniel Curtin missed all of last year. I think he didn't miss all of last year. He played like 1 or 2 games, but he's definitely put on a lot of size, this guy. And I think Daniel Curtin's going to be utilised, whether it be forward or mid for the Adelaide Crows. And I think Adelaide Crows are probably one of the most exciting teams to watch this year, as well as the Eagles and North. I think because of their youth, they've got a lot of unpredictability in terms of like what's going to happen. It's exciting. And then for my utility, I've got Harley Reid. I couldn't pass him up. And I think Harley Reid, if Liam Baker and Jack Graham can protect this guy, I think he's going to have a lot of upside this year, Harley Reid. That was the thing that was missing. And there was the game against St Kilda, West Coast versus St Kilda at Optus Stadium, where Harley Reid got done for sling tackling Darcy Wilson and got basically ruled out of Rising Star contention. Harley Reid, that game was the clearest game to me where I was like, this kid needs protection. This kid needs a bit of freedom to play as he was wanting to, but he was getting shut down and tagged the shit out of by Windhager and I think another guy as well, by Ross. I mean, so if Harley Reid can have a year where he's literally like killing it, which I know he can, everyone knows he can. He basically burnt off Petrarca and Oliver. Which I guess, shows that he's got that massive upside, and I had to have him in the team because I think he's going to go to 800k this year. I've got a funny feeling. But what do you guys reckon? Comment down below. What do you reckon of the team? Subject to change, of course. But if you have any feedback, comments down below. If you play AFL Fantasy, let me know. It's actually pretty good fun. I had the first AFL Fantasy year last year, and I learned a lot from that. But this year is obviously we'll see how we go. But comment down below, like, subscribe, guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers, guys.